What's up everyone, I'm SuperSonicJB. Banana! If only I had a real banana, that would've looked way funnier. Let me ask you, have you ever just sat there playing a game and thought to yourself, man, I really want to eat a banana right now. But then you're like, oh well, it costs $2 whole at the grocery store, and come on, who can afford that in today's economy? Especially when most of your paycheck is used to buy games like Madagascar 2. Well, I guess if I'm ever hungry for bananas, I can always just play Donkey Kong Country. He's not even eating those bananas, they're just entering his body. I've always been a big fan of video games. You can tell from checking out my YouTube channel. Yeah, I actually played that game. Now, the main reason why I got into gaming in the first place was because of my dad. He was a huge fan of video games back in the day, and he introduced me to gaming as a whole. And the first video game we ever played together was Donkey Kong Country on the SNES. This was the first video game I ever played, and I loved it. My dad and I played through the entire game together, and even though it was a tough game, and we got lots of game overs, eventually we managed to beat the game. Playing this game with my dad is still one of my favorite gaming memories to this day. And even though he doesn't play video games anymore, I still appreciate this memory nonetheless. We also did a playthrough together on Donkey Kong Country 2, and that was also a fun time. As for Donkey Kong Country 3, we never played it. Whoops. Now, why am I talking about this, you may be asking? Well, today I want to take a look back at the Donkey Kong Country Trilogy and see if it still holds up to this day. Now, DK has been around for many years before the Country games even came out. He was in old arcade games where he was a villain who kidnapped women and threw barrels at a red guy. They were fun games and all, but Donkey Kong Country really helped bring back life to this series. It was pretty much dead back in the early 90s. I mean, Donkey Kong Jr. Math wasn't doing the series any favors. When Nintendo announced the first Donkey Kong Country game, fans were super excited. It was a reboot that featured a new fresh look for our ape friend, the platforming seemed really fun, DK has a new partner named Diddy Kong, it was definitely a fun time. This game was also made by the company Rare, who went on to make some of the best video games ever made back in the 90s. Now, it's been a while since I played the DK Country games, and since I apparently never reviewed a DK game on my channel before, I thought today I'd fix that and review the original Donkey Kong Country Trilogy on the SNES, so let's check out these games, shall we? Up first, let's take a look at where it all began with Donkey Kong Country on the SNES. So this game starts off with a nice intro of Cranky Kong, who, fun fact, was the original Donkey Kong from the arcade games, playing some peaceful music. But then Donkey Kong appears out of nowhere with his boombox, jumps on Cranky Kong, and dances like he's in Dance Dance Revolution Mario Mix. But then Cranky comes back for revenge and kills him. Anyways, after selecting a file and selecting one player, we probably start playing the game. We jump into the first level called Jungle Hijinks, and let me just say this is such a good opening level. The level starts out with Donkey Kong blasting out of his house, but if you go back inside his house, you can get a 1-up balloon, and he can bounce on a tire. His house looks pretty cool too. Also, there's a cave under his house that you can go inside of, and you see that Kong's banana horde is all gone. This is because in the game story, King K. Rool and his Kremlin army have stolen all of DK's bananas, and you had to get them all back. But wait, there's some right there. I don't know what's happening to me. Yeah, there's no opening cutscene in this game that explains the story. You literally have to read the manual in order to do that. And honestly, I love this manual. It goes over a lot of details on the game's story as well as the gameplay, and I love it. So bananas in this game are the main collectibles here. If you manage to collect 100 bananas, you get an extra life, just like how in Mario if you get 100 coins, you get a 1-up. Also in this level you'll find a barrel, and if you break it, Diddy Kong pops out, and now you can play as him. Now personally, I've always been more of a Diddy Kong fan over Donkey Kong, mainly because when my dad and I played this game, I always played as Diddy while he was Donkey. Now both characters do have their differences. Donkey Kong is stronger, which lets him jump on bigger enemies, and he can stay on the ground to kill any enemies nearby, while Diddy Kong is faster and can jump higher and further. Jungle Hijinks is a perfect tutorial level too. Platforming is mostly pretty simple. There's multiple types of enemies you can come across. There's multiple secret paths scattered throughout the level that can lead to extra life or more bananas. Then there's the introduction to Rambi the Rhino, an animal buddy who can plow through all the enemies in your way. Yeah, Grinch! Rambi can also reveal secret paths that you can go inside of to get bonus stuff. Once you reach the end of the level, everything gets dark and it becomes nighttime, which I always thought was a pretty cool feature in this game. Once you beat a level, the two Kongs will dance in celebration, and you'll unlock the next level. There's a total of 6 worlds in this game, with there being around 6 to 15 levels per world. There's 40 levels in total in this game, which may seem like a lot, but honestly, this game really isn't even that long, with the full playthrough of this game lasting anywhere between an hour and a half to 2 hours. Now yes, while this isn't a very long game nowadays, back then in the 90s, This was typically how long games were. What's also cool about this game is that as you play on, you can meet other members of the Kong crew, like Cranky Kong, who will usually give you advice on levels, and will even whack at you with his cane. He also gives you that typical old man speech of, "Hey, these crazy kids today. Back in my day, video games only lasted about an hour, and they were 100 times harder than all this mumbo jumbo today. I mean, just look at stuff like EA and loot boxes. What the fuck is that?" You can also meet Funky Kong, who lets you quick travel from world to world, and Candy Kong, who lets you save your game. Out of these three Kongs, I'd say Funky is my favorite. Because come on, man, who doesn't love a surfer dude wearing sunglasses? Howdy do, bros! Now, each level in this game feels unique and has its own gimmicks. For instance, the second stage in the game is similar to the first stage, but now it's raining, and there's a bunch of vines you have to swing on to progress through the level. Then later on, you'll come across an underwater stage, where you swim around, avoid enemies, and ride on a blue swordfish named Unguard, who can swim really fast and can kill most enemies with a charge attack. Then you got levels where you have to jump from barrel to barrel and have to time your shots so that you don't die. And come on, who could possibly forget the minecart levels, where you ride in a minecart and have to jump over gaps in enemies in order to make it to the end. These levels are so much fun, but they can be pretty challenging too, especially for young kids, like myself back in the day. Now I could talk about all the other cool level mechanics this game has, but that'd take way too long, so let's talk about some of the other cool things this game has in it. Each level has these 4 different letters that you can collect, and once you collect all 4 of them, they spell out the word Kong. How original. Once you get all 4 of these letters in a level, you can get an extra life. Though these letters can sometimes be tough to read, so sometimes you might beat a level only getting like 2 letters. And it can spell out something like KO or ON, which is what that light switch in my room says. Also, some levels have these gold animal collectibles, and once you collect all 3 of them, you get to play a bonus stage, where you get to play as an animal buddy, and collect as many gold pieces as possible, within a time limit. For every 100 of these collected, you'll get an extra life. Honestly, I wasn't a big fan of these bonus levels. I mean, they were cool the first time around, and it did help if you were low on lives, but this time limit lasts way too long, and you can't just leave no. You have to wait until time runs out before you can get back to the main game. And all this just for some 1-ups, just doesn't seem that worth it. At the end of each world, you'll take on a boss. Now let me just say this now. Aside from the final boss in the game, all the bosses suck in this game. The bosses themselves are just bigger versions of enemies you fought for in the past, or just a freaking barrel throwing enemies at you. Most of the bosses are beaten with you just jumping on them, or throwing a barrel at them, which can be pretty boring and repetitive. Once you beat a boss, a giant banana will fall out of the sky, and the Kong you're playing as will celebrate. Also, yeah, that banana has a Nintendo logo on it. Man, they put that on Diddy's hat, now a banana? He'll just slap that thing on anything nowadays. Now keep in mind, this game can be pretty challenging at times. Some levels are insane with their tight platforming and make you question if the devs hated you.
Fuck that guy!
Plus you die in 1 hit every time, and trust me, that game over screen is awful. I mean, look at them, they're so sad! Now yes, the game's hard, but it does feel so satisfying when you finally manage to beat a level you've been stuck on. And beating the entire game itself really made you feel accomplished, like you just won a Nobel Prize. I also want to mention how much I love the music and the sound design in this game. The theme of Jungle Hijinks is so energetic and amazing, and who could forget the peaceful underwater theme? The sound design is also really good. I love hearing all the sounds the Kongs make, and who doesn't love hearing a Kremling die? I really got nothing more else to say about the rest of the game, so let's check out the final boss, King K. Rool. This is the only good boss in the entire game. You fight him on his ship, he throws his crown at you, jumps around, throws his balls in your face, and you jump on his head to damage him. Once he's beaten, the credits roll. But when you take a closer look at the credits, you notice all the names here are based off of Kremling. You know, the guys who've been killing this entire game. But then King K. Rool gets back up, and the second half of the fight begins. And he's way more aggressive this time around. I can only imagine how many people fell for this fake ending back in the day, but I gotta admit, I thought it was a pretty cool plot twist. But after you jump on K. Rool's head a few more times, he's finally beaten, and you get your banana horde back, even though we've been picking him up all across the game. So in the end, Donkey Kong Country on the SNES was a super fun game, and even to this day, it still holds up. The platforming is a lot of fun, the level design and graphics are fantastic, and the music was amazing. If you haven't played this game before, then I definitely recommend it to you. So yeah, that was Donkey Kong Country, and yeah, like I said, it's a really awesome game, and it'll always hold a special place in my heart, because it's the first video game I ever played. But now, we jump into Donkey Kong Country 2, and this is my favorite game out of the trilogy, so let's check it out. So Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Kong Quest, which I originally thought was called Diddy Kong's Quest, let's be real here, that title is way better. It's a sequel to the first Donkey Kong Country game. This was released 1 year after the first game for the SNES, and it revolved around having Diddy Kong as the main character this time around, instead of Donkey Kong. According to the game's manual, and a note in the first level, Donkey Kong has been captured by Captain K. Rool. Yeah, in this game, K. Rool becomes a pirate. Guess his days of being a king are over. So now that Donkey has been captured, Diddy Kong and his girlfriend Dixie Kong go out on an epic adventure to save DK, as well as the entire world, I think. Maybe. I'm sure the whole world's in danger in this game somehow. Now, to be perfectly honest, I always thought this game was the best in the trilogy. Why, you may ask? Well, let's dive into the game and find out. So the first world in this game takes place on a pirate ship. The same pirate ship where you fought K. Rool in the first game. In the first level, the game will teach you a lot of mechanics. Obviously, you can run around and jump like in the first game, but in this game, we have a new move, which lets us throw our partner, and using this technique allows us to reach areas and items that we couldn't normally reach by jumping. Now, Diddy Kong plays exactly like how he did in the first game, with him running fast and being able to jump high and far, and Dixie Kong can glide. This gliding technique is honestly pretty broken, and makes playing the game way easier. There's also this note from K. Rool that I mentioned earlier that says that he's kidnapped Donkey Kong. Oh no, poor DK! There's a bunch of new types of enemies here. There's also tons of secret paths you can explore, which lead to you playing a small minigame, which consists of finding a coin, defeating all the enemies, or collecting all the stars. All these minigames have a time limit too, and thankfully the timer ends right as you complete your objective, which is already an improvement for the first game, which made you wait until the time ran out. Plus, these minigames give you coins that you can use to either save your game, warp from world to world, get tips, or participate in a game show to get some extra lives. Alright, sir, to get $10,000, answer this question. What is...
Pass!
The first level, called Pirate Panic, is such a great tutorial level, and honestly, I think it's a better level than Jungle Hijinks in the first game. Though Jungle Hijinks did have better music in my opinion. Now, one of the reasons why I like this game more than the original is because of how amazing the levels are. The level design is top notch in this game, and the backgrounds and environments are way more interesting this time around. The first game reused a lot of stuff in levels, and while this game does that too, most of the levels here feel more unique and interesting. You go from pirate ship to inside a volcano to a carnival, and who could forget the level with all those spiky vines with the beautiful music. Man, just listening to this music makes me want to contribute to society and play an instrument myself. But then I realized I have no musical talent, so screw that thought. Now this game does reuse the same engine that the first game had, so graphically everything looks the same, but this game was such a huge improvement and had way more content than the first game ever did. There's 8 worlds in this game with 52 levels in total to play from, and these levels are just so much better designed than the levels from the first game. One of the biggest things this game does right is making fun boss fights. In the first game, all the bosses were just normal enemies, but bigger, and they were pretty boring to fight, except for King K. Rool, of course. This game's bosses are all unique and way more fun to fight. The first boss has you fight a giant pirate bird, and you have to throw her babies back at her to hurt her. Then there's this boss where you fight a flying sword over lava, and you have to throw cannonballs at him and jump from hook to hook to avoid his attacks. Then you got a fight against a buff critter who can shake the ground, and you have to throw TNT at him to kill him. But yeah, the bosses are way better to fight in the sequel. Then there's the animal buddies, who also make a return, and wow are they fun. You got some of the returning ones like Rambi the Rhino and Enguarde the Swordfish, but there's also some new ones like Rattly the Snake, who can jump super high, or Squirter the Spider, who can shoot webs to kill enemies, and he can turn his webs into platforms that he can jump on. Squawks the Parrot also makes a return here. Now in the first game he was only used to light up dark areas, but now in the sequel you can ride on him, and he can fly across the level and spit out those things out of his mouth. I don't know what those are. You can also come across barrels where you can transform into the animal buddies and play as them, which is pretty cool. There's also some other animal buddies that can be used for support, like Glimmer the anglerfish, who can light up dark underwater areas, or Clapper the seal, who can cool down or freeze water by breathing on it. I tried this before, it doesn't work in real life. Something to keep in mind here about this game is just how freaking hard it is. If you thought Donkey Kong Country was hard, this game will say hold my banana. Wait, that sounded kinda wrong. For real though, there's a lot more happening in these levels, and enemies here are way tougher this time around. There's also tons of stage hazards you have to deal with. For example, this dreadful level called Toxic Tower was the bane of my existence when I was a kid. In this level, you're supposed to climb the inside of a tower as a toxic ooze is rising up and trying to kill you. This level is so hard and frustrating, I couldn't beat it for several years until I finally grew up enough to the point where I was good at playing video games. The toxic ooze rises way too quickly, jumping around the snake was too slow, and all these tight jumps. Okay, maybe I went a little bit overboard there, but still, screw this level! Trust me though, you're going to be using a lot of lives while playing through this game. But thankfully getting lives in this game is way easier this time around. You can find them scattered across the halls, but truly one of the best ways to earn lives quickly is to visit Swanky Kong here. Ooh, let's be real here, it's just DK's model with stylish hair. At his place you can participate in a game show and answer some questions to get some extra lives. Things are pretty simple and straightforward, and this is by far the best and easiest way to get extra lives. Besides Swanky, you can also talk with Cranky Kong again, who will once again give you some tips and insult you. Donkey Kong will once again warp you across the map, and Wrinkly Kong, you can save your game. Though sometimes, she'll charge you some coins to save, which can be kind of annoying. Just save my game for me, please! Don't be so selfish, you old monkey! And then there's Clubba, who can take you to the bonus world, where you have to pay some coins in order to get past him. You also have this option to fight him, but if you try and select it, he'll basically kick your ass and tell you to come back later. And of course, we have to talk about the game's music. Wow, is it amazing. Everything from the level themes to the hub world, even the Kong's music sounds amazing. I still can't get Cranky's theme out of my head. Plus, who could forget the awesome music that plays after you beat a level. Now this music changes depending on if you're playing as Diddy or Dixie Kong, but just take a listen. Yeah, those victory celebrations were definitely way better then. Then you got the game over music, which yeah, will make you feel really depressed. Diddy and Dixie get captured and look so sad, and the screen turns red, which looks really creepy. Am I in hell? Now you're probably wondering how the game ends. Well, at the end you take on Captain K. Rool, and he fires some cannonballs at you and charges around the stage, but all you gotta do is throw his balls back at his face and he explodes. In certain parts of the fight, DK will fall from the ceiling, and this is so cool to see. Plus it made you feel motivated to save him. Here's the thing though, this isn't the only time you're gonna be fighting Captain K. Rool. No, if you unlock the bonus world and beat all the levels there, you get to fight K. Rool again. And once you beat him this time, you get the true ending of the game, where DK does a Shoryuken on K. Rool. Shoryuken! And sends him flying into the swamps as he gets eaten by sharks. Wow, that's kinda messed up. And then the Kong trio watches as the entire island sinks into the sea. I hope the other Kongs weren't still on that island. Huh, so that's how Wrinkly Kong died. But yeah, that's Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy Kong's Quest. God dang it, I messed up the title again! Overall, I think it's an amazing game, and like I said before, I like it better than the first game. The level design was better, the bosses were better, and the music was legendary. So up last, and certainly not least, we're going to take a look at Donkey Kong Country 3 Dixie Kong's Double Trouble. Oh, see, they got that title right! Take that, Diddy's Kong Quest! Now, this game is said to be the weakest out of the trilogy by a lot of fans. For me, I have very little to no experience with this game, up until making this video. I never owned this game until recently, and went through most of my childhood never knowing it existed. But now that I finally got the game, and I'm doing this review, let's check out the game and see if it's any good. So Donkey Kong Country 3 ditches both Donkey and Diddy Kong this time around, and stars Dixie Kong as the main character. Yeah, the DK trilogy only has Donkey Kong playable in one game. That's kinda messed up. So in the game story, that you can once again learn about by reading the game's manual, I know reading sucks, but this game has like no cutscenes. So Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong have been captured by King K. Rool, who now goes by Baron K. Roolenstein. Wow, what a name, am I right? And Dixie and her younger cousin Kiddy Kong must go on an epic adventure to save their friends. The game starts off by just throwing you in a lake. Ah! Yeah, off the bat here, I gotta say, the level select is not nearly as cool as the ones from the other games. It's a little harder to tell where you're supposed to go, and the backgrounds don't look as cool. Another thing to keep in mind here is that this game was developed alongside Banjo and Kazooie, so only half of Rare's team worked on this game, which made this game's development way harder. The game was a little shorter in the second game, but it's still longer than the first game. But that first game lasted about as long as a bathroom break in high school, so that's not saying much. Anyways, this game plays out pretty much the exact same way as the other two games. You go from level to level, jump on enemies, collect bananas and coins, etc. Now in the game you play as Dixie Kong and Kiddy Kong. Dixie plays exactly how she did in Donkey Kong Country 2, with her being able to glide using her hair, and her jumps being really good. As for Kiddy Kong, he has DK strength, he can throw barrels really far, and for some reason, he can skip on water. Who is he, Jesus? Now let me just say this, I do not like Kiddy Kong. In fact, he's one of my least favorite characters in the entire DK series. Design-wise, he's not the best looking character. I mean, he looks like one of those giant adult babies you'd see in cartoons. Plus, sometimes he cries, which can get pretty annoying. Now yes, gameplay-wise, Kiddy's pretty good, but as a character, I really hate him. As for the levels in this game, I'll admit, I like them. There's a pretty good amount of cool platforming levels, and there's loads of cool levels where you can control an animal buddy. Like this game lets you play as an elephant! Mario Wonder really was inspired by this game. The game also introduced some other characters alongside the Kongs from the previous games. And again, I like the Kongs a lot, but as for the other characters, well, they exist alright. I mean, this one bear kind of looks like Banjo, so that's cool I guess. But these other non-Kong characters are kind of forgettable, really. Speaking of the Kongs, they all pretty much do the same stuff they did in the second game. Except for Cranky. He just kind of throws a ball around at targets for a bit. And he talks a lot of shit, too! Wrinkly can save your game, Funky can warp you across the map, and Swanky has a minigame you can play. Though this time around, instead of a game show, you participate in a carnival ball tossing game, and if you win, you get lots of bananas and coins. It's a pretty simple minigame, really. Just move from left to right and toss the ball to the targets to get a high score. Playing this minigame can also get you some 1-ups really quickly, so that's pretty nice. As for the game's levels, I gotta say, I like them a lot. Every level felt unique and interesting. Heck, I'd even say this game has the best underwater levels, as well as the best snow levels. However, I still enjoyed the level design more in Donkey Kong Country 2. This game reuses a lot of gameplay mechanics and ideas from the second game, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, if it ain't broke, then don't fix it. But I just prefer how the second game handled these ideas. I mean, this game has an end goal like the second game did, and it's kind of similar to the flagpole in Mario games, but I don't know, it's still not as cool as the second game's end goals. Then there's the boss battles, and they're okay at best. I mean, the first boss fight is against a barrel with a face. I guess he got mad at us killing all his siblings before in the past, and wants his revenge. In this fight, you're supposed to knock the killer barrel back until he falls off the cliff. And he'll spit barrels back at you, and you have to jump on them, and throw these ant guys in his mouth to make him burp so he falls back. Keep doing this until he dies. Yeah, this boss kinda sucks. I mean, its design itself is already pretty terrible, and fighting it just feels like a joke. Plus, it's so anticlimactic once you beat it. They're just like, yeah, okay, next! There's no dance celebration like the other two games, which kinda sucks. The rest of the bosses aren't much better. I mean, the spider boss was decent, but all the others were pretty forgetful. Even the K. Rool fight is awful here. All he does is fly around, and you have to throw barrels at him to knock them electricity, and that's pretty much it. This was the biggest letdown of a fight in the entire game. The other two had great K. Rool fights, but this one was super lame. He's just flying at me! He's not even trying! At least try to kill me properly! As for the game's soundtrack, it was pretty good. I'd say it's probably my least favorite out of the trilogy, but still pretty good. Also, that game over music is kinda creepy. Did they get put in timeout here? Honestly, I don't have much more else to say about this game. It was fun, but I definitely liked the other two games better. And no, it's not just because those games don't have Kiddy Kong in them. Maybe it's just nostalgia, but still, I did really enjoy this game. It had fun gameplay, and that's what matters in the end. So yeah, that's my review of the Donkey Kong Country Trilogy. And yeah, overall, I loved all three of these games. They're super fun, have great level design, and amazing music. Honestly, I'd go as far to say they're better than the more modern games. I mean, the creepy game over themes themselves made the trilogy way better. So that was the Donkey Kong Country Trilogy, and like I said, I enjoyed all three games a lot. If you haven't played any of those games, I highly recommend stopping what you're doing and going to play them. Also, keep one thing in mind while playing those games. Make sure to get real bananas and not fake bananas, because trying to eat this doesn't work. That was a clean ass throw. DK would have been so jealous.